"Will you be my mom?" the pup asked the poor Omega, unaware the Alpha King was watching them. Snow covered the rooftops like a thin layer of dust, and the wind carried whispers of old magic. People rarely spoke of the Alpha King, Rylan, except in hushed tones. Some called him cruel, others said he was cursed. No one dared wander near the northern forests where the trees grew thick and twisted, and where shadows seemed to watch. In the heart of one such forest, a young Omega named Lyra moved carefully through the snow. Her clothes were thin and worn, patched many times, and her boots had holes. Yet she walked with a quiet determination, clutching a small bag of scavenged food. Her stomach growled, but she ignored it. Survival required patience, and patience was what she had learned in the years since her family had vanished. Lyra was small and gentle, with pale skin and wide, wary eyes. People in the villages whispered that she was soft and weak. Perhaps she was, they said, but soft could survive where swords and crowns could not. She knew the forest better than anyone. Every frozen stream, every hidden hollow, every old tree with hollowed roots was a secret she could rely on. It was near one of these hidden hollows that she found him. The pup was tiny, no bigger than her hand, with silver fur that shimmered in the pale winter light. Its eyes were the same silver, bright and curious, and they seemed almost human in their intelligence. Lyra froze. She had never seen a wolf like this before. She crouched low, careful not to frighten him. The pup tilted its head, and in a voice that was soft but certain it asked, "Will you be my mom?" Lyra's breath caught. She blinked, unsure if she had heard correctly. What?" she whispered, trembling. Wolves did not speak. Wolves were wild. Wolves did not ask for care. The pup's ears twitched. I need someone. Will you?" Lyra felt her heart tighten. She had known hunger, cold, and loneliness, but never such innocence looking at her like that. Her hands shook as she reached out. The pup stepped forward, tiny claws pressing into her palm. "You're not like the others," she whispered. "I don't even know who you are." "I know you can help me," the pup said simply, curling against her hand. "Please, will you?" Lyra hesitated. She had barely enough to feed herself. She lived on scraps, hiding from people who might harm her. And yet, she could not leave this creature alone. She shook her head softly, almost to herself. I suppose I will try." The pup's eyes sparkled like stars, and it yipped softly. Lyra laughed, a small, nervous sound, and gathered it into her arms. Its warmth spread through her fingers, and for a moment the cold of the forest seemed to vanish. She decided to take the pup to her small shelter, an abandoned stone cabin hidden beneath twisted roots of an old oak. She wrapped it in scraps of cloth to keep it warm and laid it near the small fire she had built. The pup curled into a ball, resting its silver head on her lap. Lyra sat quietly, watching the flames dance and feeling an unfamiliar sense of responsibility. Little did she know she was not alone. High above, on a ridge that overlooked the forest, a tall figure stood cloaked in black and gray. The Alpha King, Rylan. His eyes, sharp and commanding, watched Lyra and the pup with a mixture of curiosity and calculation. No one had dared approach the forest heart for years, and yet here she was, an Omega, holding something the king had been searching for. Ryland's hand brushed the hilt of his sword, though he did not move. The pup was no ordinary wolf. He could sense its power, the magic that flickered faintly around it. And this Omega, small, fragile, and human, had taken it into her care without fear. That alone fascinated him. Back in the cabin, Lyra hummed softly, rocking the pup. She told it stories of her life, about the village she had grown up in, the forest paths she knew, and the dreams she sometimes dared to imagine. The pup listened, eyes wide, as if it understood every word. Lyra smiled faintly, thinking how strange it was to feel such connection. She had been alone for so long, yet this tiny creature made her heart ache with tenderness. Perhaps, perhaps she could survive caring for it, even if her own life was uncertain. Outside, Ryland shifted on the ridge, watching silently. He had ruled Eldrith for decades, feared and respected, yet loneliness clung to him like a shadow. Something about this Omega, this quiet defiance in her gentle hands, stirred something he had thought lost forever. Days passed. Lyra fed the pup scraps of bread and dried meat, singing to it as the snowstorm raged outside. The pup grew stronger each day, and its silver eyes shone brighter. Lyra began to notice small things, strange sparks in the firelight, the way the pup sometimes spoke in whispers she could barely hear, as though it held knowledge beyond its years. One evening, as the wind howled through the forest, Lyra heard a sound outside the cabin. She froze. The forest was silent, yet now there was a soft crunch of snow. She grabbed a small stick for protection and crept to the doorway. The pup stirred in her arms, sensing the danger. Its ears twitched, and it growled softly, not the growl of an ordinary wolf, but one filled with warning and power. Lyra swallowed her fear and peered into the darkness. From the shadows, two glowing eyes stared back at her. They were not the pup's. Larger, colder, and calculating. Lyra's heart pounded. She knew she should run, but something rooted her to the spot. "Who's there?" she called, voice trembling. The eyes blinked and a deep, commanding voice answered, "Do not fear, Omega. I am not your enemy yet." Lyra's breath caught. The voice was strong, regal, and terrifyingly close. She turned slowly, and through the shadows she saw him, tall, cloaked, with an aura that seemed to push the very darkness away. The Alpha King. The pup stirred in her arms, whining softly. He's watching us," it whispered, its voice soft but urgent. Ryland's gaze held hers, sharp and unyielding. "You have taken something that belongs to the crown," he said. His words were not angry but calm and deliberate, carrying the weight of command. "Why do you have it?" Lyra swallowed hard, feeling a mix of fear and defiance. I found him alone. He needed help. I could not leave him." Ryland's eyes narrowed, studying her carefully. There was something in her voice, something honest, gentle, and unafraid, that made him pause. Few humans spoke with such sincerity in his presence. The pup wriggled in Lyra's arms, yipping softly. "Please, I just want her to be my mom," it said. Ryland's gaze softened slightly, though his expression remained unreadable. The pup's magic shimmered faintly in the air, and he felt the tug of prophecy long buried in Eldrith's history. He did not understand why, but he knew that this Omega, small and fragile, had stepped into a story far larger than she could imagine. Lyra's hands shook as she held the pup close. I will care for him," she whispered. "I don't know why, but I will." Ryland's lips curved slightly, almost imperceptibly. "So be it," he said, stepping back into the shadows. "But know this, Omega, nothing in my kingdom is without cost." Lyra did not move, her eyes wide with wonder and fear. The pup nuzzled her, sensing her heartbeat, and whispered, "He is watching, but he is not your enemy, not yet." As the snow fell outside and the wind moaned through the trees, Lyra sat by the fire, holding the pup close. For the first time in her life, she felt a strange hope. She did not know the path ahead, nor the dangers that lurked in the shadows, but she knew one thing. She had a family now, fragile and small, but real. And somewhere in the dark forest, a king watched silently, his heart tugged in ways he had not felt for decades. The night deepened, and the wind carried whispers of prophecy, of magic, and of bonds that could not be broken. Lyra and the pup slept together, unaware that their lives, and the fate of Eldrith itself, had just begun to intertwine. The morning sun struggled to pierce through the heavy gray clouds above Eldrith. Snow clung to the branches of the forest, glittering like shards of glass. Inside her small, hidden cabin, Lyra stirred, still cradling the silver-eyed pup in her arms. She watched him stretch and yawn, his small body warm against her chest. "Good morning, little one," she whispered softly, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Did you sleep well?" The pup blinked slowly, its silver eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. "Yes, but I heard something," it murmured in a soft, human-like voice. "A presence watching." Lyra's heart skipped a beat. She had felt it too, the strange sensation of being observed, as if the trees themselves were holding their breath. She hugged the pup closer. "It's probably just the wind or animals," she said, though her voice wavered. Deep down, she knew the truth. Outside, hidden among the twisted trees, Rylan watched. The Alpha King had followed her trail since she took the pup, moving silently through the snow with a grace that was both terrifying and beautiful. His black cloak blended with the shadows, and his silver eyes glinted like moonlight on ice. He had seen her compassion, the gentle way she cared for the pup, and something inside him stirred, a mixture of curiosity, admiration, and a faint ache he had not felt in decades. Most humans feared him. They bowed, whispered, or ran. But this Omega, she was different. She had no fear in her heart, only a quiet strength that challenged him in ways no one ever had. Lyra spent the morning gathering what little food she could find. She ventured into the forest carefully, avoiding the frozen streams and deep snowdrifts. The pup trailed her, energetic and eager. His silver fur glowed faintly against the snow, and Lyra marveled at his unusual beauty. "You're a strange little one," she said with a smile, setting him down near a patch of edible herbs. "I don't even know what kind of magic is in you, but I'll protect you. That's all I can do." The pup wagged his small tail, then glanced around nervously. "I think he's here," he whispered. Lyra froze. "Who, the Alpha King?" she asked cautiously. "Yes," the pup admitted. "He watches us, but I don't know why. There's power in him and darkness too." Lyra swallowed hard, her stomach twisting with fear. She had heard stories about the Alpha King, how he ruled Eldrith with strength and shadow magic, how no one dared cross him. And yet, part of her could not ignore the way her heart thumped when she thought of him. She could not explain it. Before she could react further, the trees shifted, and Ryland stepped from the shadows. Snow crunched softly under his boots. His presence filled the forest like a storm, commanding attention without a word. Lyra stiffened, clutching the pup to her chest. "Do not be afraid, Omega," he said, his voice calm but edged with authority. "I'm not here to harm you yet." Lyra's eyes widened. She wanted to flee, but her legs refused to move. She had never been so close to the Alpha King. He was taller than she imagined, his black cloak flowing in the wind, silver eyes piercing through the gray light. There was power in him, undeniable and terrifying, but also a sadness she could not explain. "Why are you following us?" she asked, her voice small but firm. Ryland tilted his head, studying her. "You have taken something that belongs to my kingdom," he said. "Something very important. I need to know why." Lyra tightened her hold on the pup. "He's just a pup. He's lost. He needed help. I couldn't leave him alone." Ryland's eyes softened slightly, though his expression remained stern. "This pup is not ordinary. You do not understand the forces that surround him. Yet you chose to care for him anyway." Lyra blinked. "I don't know about forces or magic. I only know he needed me." The pup yipped softly in her arms. "See, I told you," it said. "He's watching, but he's not your enemy, not yet." Ryland's gaze flicked to the pup, and for a brief moment something in his eyes softened. He had been alone for so long, ruling a kingdom of shadows and fear, yet this small creature stirred emotions he had buried deep. "I will warn you, Omega," Ryland said, his tone firm again. "The world outside this forest is dangerous. Many will seek this pup for power, for dark reasons. You must decide whether to stay and face those dangers or leave while you still can." Lyra felt the weight of his words. She could not abandon the pup now. He depended on her just as much as she depended on the hope he gave her. I will stay," she said, her voice trembling slightly but determined. "I won't leave him." Ryland's lips pressed into a thin line. "Very well," he said. "But know this, choosing to stay does not make the path safe. You will face shadows that even I fear." The forest grew quieter, as if listening to their conversation. The wind whispered through the trees, carrying faint echoes of forgotten magic. Lyra hugged the pup closer, feeling his warmth against her chest. He shivered slightly but nuzzled her in return. "You will be okay," she whispered. I will protect you, I promise. Rylan watched from the shadows, noting the quiet strength in her voice. There was something in her compassion, her determination, that reminded him of a time long ago when he had not been king, when he had not been cursed. The pup had drawn her here, yes, but she had drawn something out of him as well, something he had thought lost forever. Over the next few days, Lyra and the pup settled into a cautious routine. She scavenged food, built small traps to catch fish from the frozen streams, and kept the fire burning in their cabin. The pup grew stronger each day, his silver fur glowing faintly in the moonlight. He began to speak more clearly, sharing strange stories of magic and ancient forces he seemed to remember from before his abandonment. One evening, as Lyra prepared a small meal of dried herbs and bread, the pup suddenly stiffened. "He's coming," he whispered urgently. "He's near." Lyra's heart raced. She glanced at the forest edge where shadows moved unnaturally, and then from the darkness Rylan emerged again, silent as a winter storm. "You are learning quickly," he said, his voice low and measured. "You care for the pup as if he were your own. That is rare." Lyra looked up at him, her eyes wary. "Why do you care if I care for him or not?" she asked softly. Rylan paused, his gaze flickering to the pup. "Because what you do affects more than just yourself. This pup, he carries a power that could change everything, and yet you treat him with kindness. That is unexpected." The pup yipped happily and wiggled in her arms. "See, he likes you too," Lyra said, smiling faintly despite her fear. Ryland's eyes softened again, though the tension in his posture remained. "I have ruled with power and fear for decades," he said quietly. "And yet, this small Omega, this fragile creature, shows me something I had forgotten, something I thought lost forever." Lyra's heart skipped a beat. She did not fully understand him, but there was a strange connection forming, a silent bond that neither of them could explain. She looked down at the pup, who yipped and wagged his tail. I just want him to be safe," she whispered. Rylan nodded slowly. "Then you will have my attention and my protection for now." The pup snuggled against her, whispering, "He's not as frightening as he seems, not when you see what's behind his eyes." Lyra looked at Rylan, and for the first time she saw not only the king but the man behind the power, the loneliness, the pain, and the longing that mirrored her own in some strange, unspoken way. Days passed, and Lyra began to notice small details about Rylan, how he moved silently through the forest, how his gaze lingered on her and the pup, how his presence filled the air with quiet authority. She was drawn to him, though she could not explain why. And he, in turn, found himself watching her more often than he admitted, fascinated by her courage and the warmth she brought to the tiny creature he had once thought was nothing more than a tool of magic. One night, as a silver moon rose above the forest, the pup whispered, "The shadows are moving closer. Soon you will face dangers you cannot imagine." Lyra hugged him tightly. "I know, but we are together. That is enough." Outside, Ryland's eyes glimmered in the moonlight. "Together," he repeated softly. "Yes, perhaps there is hope yet." And somewhere in the dark forest, magic stirred, whispering of powers awakened, bonds formed, and a destiny that was only just beginning. The forest of Eldrith was alive with quiet whispers. Snow drifted slowly to the ground, and the air was thick with frost and magic. Lyra tightened the straps of her worn cloak and pulled the pup closer to her chest. His silver eyes glimmered with intelligence and a faint light that seemed almost otherworldly. "They're near," the pup whispered. Its small body trembled slightly, though it tried to appear brave. Lyra's heart pounded in her chest. She knew the forest was dangerous, but the warning from the pup made every nerve alert. She glanced through the frost-covered trees, searching for movement. Shadows shifted in the distance, and she could hear the faint crunch of snow under heavy footsteps. Ryland's presence had grown stronger in her life. For days now he had remained nearby, silent and watchful, moving like a shadow through the trees. Sometimes, Lyra caught a glimpse of him from the corner of her eye, standing tall and silent, his black cloak blending perfectly with the winter gray. And though she feared him, she also felt a strange sense of protection whenever he was near. The pup wriggled in her arms. "They're scouts," it whispered. "They're coming to take me for the magic I carry. We must be ready." Lyra nodded, her hands trembling as she hugged him tighter. "Then we will be ready," she said firmly. "We won't let them take you, not ever." The snow around them began to shimmer with a faint, silvery light, the pup's magic stirring in response to the approaching danger. Lyra marveled at it. Even after all these days, she could not fully understand it. But one thing was clear. Whatever magic the pup carried, it was powerful enough to attract those who would use it for their own gain. A sudden rustle made her spin. From the shadows, figures emerged, cloaked and moving silently through the forest. They were dark, menacing, and unmistakably dangerous. Lyra froze, clutching the pup as their leader stepped forward. His eyes glowed faintly, and a cold wind seemed to follow him. Before Lyra could react, a dark shadow moved between them and the intruders. Rylan appeared as if summoned by the forest itself, his aura flaring like a storm. Snow swirled around him, and the trees seemed to bend away from his presence. "You will not touch them," Rylan said, his voice calm but filled with authority. It carried over the frozen trees like thunder, shaking the very air. The intruders hesitated. Even the bravest of humans could feel the weight of his power, the unyielding strength of the Alpha King. But they did not leave. Instead, they circled, waiting for the right moment to strike. Lyra's hands shook, but she held the pup firmly. "Stay behind me," she whispered, though her voice betrayed her fear. "I won't let anyone harm you." Ryland's eyes softened slightly as he looked at her. "Do not put yourself in danger," he said quietly, almost gently. "I will handle this." And with that, he stepped forward, his black cloak swirling like smoke, and the forest seemed to respond to him. Snow lifted from the ground, forming sharp, glittering shards around him. The intruders flinched, but they were persistent. Lyra watched, mesmerized and terrified. She had never seen anything like this. The sheer power of the king, the quiet strength he commanded without raising a hand. And yet, there was something more beneath the strength, something vulnerable that flickered in his silver eyes whenever they met hers. The battle was swift but terrifying. Rylan moved like a shadow, fast and precise, sending the intruders fleeing with bursts of force that seemed almost magical. The snow around him glowed faintly, shimmering with the strange power that only he could command. When the intruders finally retreated, the forest fell silent again. Lyra's legs felt weak and she clutched the pup tighter, her eyes wide with fear and awe. "You are unharmed," Rylan said, approaching slowly. His gaze softened as it met hers. "But you cannot remain unguarded forever. This pup carries a power that will draw many more." Lyra nodded, feeling a strange connection to him. "Then I will stay," she said quietly. "I will protect him no matter what comes." The pup yipped softly and wiggled in her arms. "I knew you would," it said, its voice filled with quiet excitement. For a moment, Lyra noticed the tension in Ryland's posture. He looked at her, not as a king to a subject, but as a man watching someone he could not fully understand. There was something in her determination, her courage, that drew him in. And though he tried to remain distant, a faint warmth began to stir in the cold shadow of his heart. Over the next few days, Lyra learned to move with more confidence. She began to explore the forest with the pup, practicing ways to use his magic for small protections and learning to sense when danger was near. The pup's power grew stronger, responding to her emotions and intentions, and Lyra realized that her bond with him was deeper than she had first imagined. Rylan continued to watch from the shadows, sometimes closer, sometimes farther away. He rarely spoke, but his presence was constant, a silent reminder of both danger and protection. And Lyra found herself thinking about him more often than she wanted to admit, drawn to the mystery and strength that surrounded him. One evening, as the moon rose high above the snow-covered trees, Lyra and the pup settled near a small frozen stream. She hummed softly, and the pup rested his head on her lap. "Do you think he will come again?" she asked, glancing into the forest. The pup's silver eyes glimmered. "Yes, but not to harm us," it whispered. "He watches and he cares. You must see it too." Lyra nodded slowly, realizing that she had indeed felt his care. It was quiet, almost hidden behind his authority and power, but it was there. And she could not deny that it made her heart ache in ways she did not understand. Suddenly, a faint glow appeared in the distance. Lyra's heart skipped a beat. The pup lifted its head, ears twitching. "He is near," it whispered. Ryland stepped into the clearing, his black cloak brushing the snow. His eyes softened as he looked at Lyra and the pup. "You have grown stronger," he said quietly, "both of you." Lyra's cheeks flushed. "We are only surviving," she said softly. "No," Ryland said, his voice low but certain. "You are learning, and you are protecting him with more than fear or instinct. There is courage in you, Omega, a courage that I have not seen in decades." Lyra blinked, startled by his words. She did not know what to say. The pup wagged its small tail and nuzzled her hand, sensing the shift in the air. Ryland's eyes softened further, and for a moment the distance between them seemed smaller. "Do you understand what you are holding in your hands?" he asked quietly, glancing at the pup. Lyra shook her head. "Only that he needs me and I need him." Ryland stepped closer, and Lyra could feel the warmth radiating from him, though it was mingled with a strength that was almost overwhelming. "The world outside this forest is harsh," he said. "There are those who would use this pup's magic for their own ends. You must be prepared." "I will be," Lyra said firmly. "I will protect him no matter what." The pup yipped softly and wagged its tail. "And I will help you," it said. "Together we can face anything." Ryland studied her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. "You are brave," he said finally. "Perhaps more than you realize, but courage alone will not be enough. You must learn to trust not just your heart but also those who stand beside you." Lyra's heart skipped a beat. She glanced at the pup, then back at Ryland. I will try," she whispered. The forest fell silent again, save for the gentle flow of the frozen stream. Snow drifted down from the trees, sparkling in the moonlight, and for the first time Lyra felt a strange sense of hope. She was not alone. She had the pup, and she had something else. Something she could not yet name, but that stirred deep within her heart. That night, as she held the pup close and watched the stars glimmer through the frosty canopy, Lyra realized that the path ahead would be dangerous. Shadows were moving, threats were near, and the magic that surrounded them was both a gift and a curse. And yet, she felt ready. For she was no longer just a forgotten Omega in a cold, empty forest. She was a protector, a guide, and a friend to a creature whose destiny was tied to the fate of Eldrith itself. And somewhere, watching from the shadows, the Alpha King felt a stir of emotion he could not name, something that made him question the years of solitude he had endured and the walls he had built around his heart. The forest of Eldrith was quiet, but not peaceful. Snow lay thick on the ground, muffling footsteps, yet the air was tense with anticipation. Shadows twisted among the trees, carrying whispers of danger. Lyra's hands trembled slightly as she held the silver-eyed pup close. Its fur glimmered softly in the moonlight, and its small body was warm against her chest. "They're coming," the pup whispered. Its voice trembled with urgency. "This time they are stronger, faster, and they will not stop until they have what they seek." Lyra nodded, her eyes scanning the darkened forest. She had learned to move quietly, to sense danger, and to trust the pup's magic. But even with all her courage, fear coiled around her heart like a frozen vine. She knew this would be the most dangerous night of her life. From the shadows, a figure emerged with silent grace. Ryland the Alpha King stepped forward, his black cloak flowing like smoke around him. His silver eyes glimmered in the moonlight, sharp and commanding. Lyra felt her pulse quicken, not with fear this time, but with a strange mix of awe and trust. "You are ready," he said quietly, his voice low but filled with authority. Together we will face them. Lyra swallowed hard. I hope so, she whispered. The pup yipped softly, nuzzling her hand, as if lending its own strength. The intruders appeared suddenly, moving faster than before. Their forms were shadowed, but their eyes glowed faintly red, filled with hunger for the pup's power. Lyra's hands clenched the pup close as they surrounded her. "Do not harm her," Ryland's voice boomed across the clearing, carrying the weight of the forest itself. Snow lifted from the ground in a swirling gust, and the air seemed to shimmer with his power. The intruders hesitated for a moment, but then, with a growl, they surged forward. Lyra's heart pounded as she ducked instinctively, the pup pressing into her arms. Ryland moved like a storm. His cloak swirled around him and his hands glowed faintly with shadowed light. With precise movements, he pushed back the intruders, each step radiating authority and strength. Lyra watched, amazed at the sheer force of his power. Yet even as he defended them, she could see the weight in his eyes, the loneliness, the regret, and the long years of guarding his kingdom with cold authority. "You can do this," Lyra whispered to herself, her voice trembling but determined. She glanced at the pup. "We can do this together." The pup's silver eyes glimmered with power. Tiny sparks of light flickered around it, responding to Lyra's courage. A soft hum filled the air, almost musical, as if the forest itself was awakening to their presence. The intruders attacked again, faster this time. But Lyra realized something new. The pup's magic was responding not only to danger but to her emotions. Fear made it flicker faintly, but determination made it blaze bright. She focused, sending a silent command through her heart: "Protect us." A wave of silver light burst from the pup, scattering the intruders like leaves in the wind. They howled and retreated, but more were coming, faster, relentless. Lyra's hands shook as she held the pup tighter. Ryland stepped closer to her, his aura blending with the pup's silver light. "Do not fear," he said quietly. "You are stronger than you realize, and together we are unstoppable." Lyra felt a warmth spread through her chest, a strange combination of trust, courage, and something she had never felt before. She looked at Ryland, then at the pup, and realized that she was not alone. For the first time in her life, she felt truly connected to someone and to something greater than herself. The intruders surged again, this time forming a circle around them. Lyra's pulse raced. She whispered to the pup, "We must fight together." The pup yipped and glimmered with silver light, matching her determination. Ryland's shadowed energy swirled, forming a protective shield around them. And then, with a sudden burst, they moved as one: Lyra, the pup, and Ryland, facing the intruders with courage and power intertwined. The battle was fierce but brief. Lyra felt the magic pulse through her, a connection with the pup that she had never imagined possible. Ryland moved with precision and grace, his power blending seamlessly with the pup's light and Lyra's courage. The intruders were thrown back, howling in defeat, and the forest seemed to exhale in relief. When the last intruder disappeared into the shadows, Lyra sank to her knees, clutching the pup. Its silver eyes glimmered, calm now, and it yipped softly. "We did it," it whispered. Ryland approached slowly, his cloak trailing in the snow. He looked at Lyra, his silver eyes softening. "You were remarkable," he said quietly, "brave and compassionate. The bond you share with the pup, it is rare and powerful. You have changed something here tonight." Lyra's cheeks flushed and she looked down at the pup. We did it together," she whispered. The pup nuzzled her hand. "Yes, together, and now the curse begins to weaken." Lyra looked up at Ryland. "Curse?" she asked, puzzled. Ryland's expression darkened slightly, but there was no anger, only truth. "I have been bound by a curse for decades. It has forced me to rule with shadows and solitude. But your courage, your compassion, and the pup's magic, they have begun to break it." Lyra's heart skipped a beat. She glanced at the pup, then back at Ryland. "So we helped you," Ryland nodded slowly. "More than you know. And in helping me, you have shown that strength and kindness can coexist. that even in darkness light can shine. The forest seemed to respond to his words. Snow shimmered, and the shadows lifted slightly, as if the air itself was lighter. Lyra felt a strange warmth spread through her chest. She looked at the pup, then at Rylan, and realized that they were no longer just protector and protected. They were a family. For the first time, Rylan removed his cloak, revealing the man beneath the kingly exterior. His eyes held no threat, only quiet admiration and something tender that made Lyra's heart ache. She had never seen anyone so powerful yet so human. "You saved him," Rylan said softly, his gaze flicking to the pup. "And in doing so, you saved me as well." Lyra felt a strange emotion stir within her, pride, relief, and a connection she could not fully name. I only wanted to protect him," she whispered. "But I'm glad it helped you too." The pup yipped happily, jumping slightly in her arms. "We are all together now," it said. "No one can separate us." Ryland smiled faintly, a rare and almost gentle smile. "Yes," he said, "together we can face anything." Over the next few days, the forest of Eldrith seemed to change. Snow glimmered like silver dust, the trees appeared lighter, and even the wind felt calmer. The curse that had weighed on the Alpha King for decades was lifting, though remnants remained, a reminder of the battles fought and the lessons learned. Lyra, the pup, and Ryland spent their days exploring the forest, learning from each other. Lyra taught the pup small skills of magic control and survival, while Ryland taught them both the strength of strategy and patience. And as they spent time together, trust grew into something deeper, a bond unspoken but undeniable. One evening, as the sun set behind the snowy hills, Lyra sat near the frozen stream with the pup curled in her lap. Rylan approached quietly, sitting a short distance away. For a long moment none of them spoke. They only watched the silver light glimmer on the snow and the calm silence of the forest. Finally, Rylan spoke. "You have changed everything," he said quietly. "Not just for the pup, not just for me, but for this forest, this kingdom. Your courage and kindness have reminded me that even the darkest hearts can find redemption." Lyra looked up, her eyes meeting his. I didn't do it for that. I only wanted to protect him." Ryland's gaze softened. "Sometimes that is enough to change the world." The pup yipped softly, nuzzling her hand. "And sometimes it is enough to change hearts too," it said. Lyra laughed softly, the sound light and warm. She hugged the pup close, then looked at Rylan. "So, what happens now?" she asked. Rylan paused, thinking. "Now we live. We protect each other, we heal, and we face whatever comes together." Lyra nodded, a sense of peace settling in her chest. The dangers were not gone entirely, but with Rylan and the pup by her side, she felt ready for whatever the future held. The moon rose high above the forest, casting silver light across the snow. Lyra, the pup, and Rylan stood together, a trio bound by courage, magic, and trust. The forest seemed to sigh in relief, and for the first time in decades, the Alpha King allowed himself a moment of hope. The pup yipped happily. "We did it," it said. "We are free and together." Lyra smiled, hugging the pup tightly. "Yes, together." Ryland stepped closer, his hand resting gently on her shoulder. "Together," he repeated, a faint warmth in his voice that had not been there before. And in that quiet forest, under the silver light of the moon, three hearts, human, magical, and kingly, found redemption, courage, and the beginning of a legend that would be remembered for generations. The shadows had lifted, but not forgotten. The magic had awakened, but it was no longer dangerous. And in the heart of Eldrith, the forgotten Omega, the silver-eyed pup, and the Alpha King discovered something more powerful than fear, more enduring than magic, and more eternal than any curse. The bond of love, trust, and hope.